both in English and Russian. Dear, dear colleagues, dear participants, we start our second scientific seminar on non-Western regional matters and regionalism dedicated to Asia-centric regional matters. And this is the regionalism in Asia. And for the welcoming speech, for introductory speech, we invite Nikolai, the deputy head of the Faculty of the Humanitarian and Social Sciences on the international activity for opening of our event. Nikolai, the floor is yours. Thank you very much, Denis. Good day, dear colleagues. I am glad to welcome our Russian and foreign colleagues. I got acquainted to the program, and today you would have very fruitful, very rich agenda, and at the end there would be not less interesting and informative discussion in the name of the Faculty of Humanitarian and Social Science. I'm glad to welcome all the participants of the seminar as a centric regionalism. And I would highlight that the importance of this scientific seminar is in the necessity to study the dynamics of regional integration in the frame of the Regional Economic Partnership, Shanghai Organization of Cooperation, the Organization of Economic Cooperation, and the meeting on the trust and cooperation in Asia, level of evaluation of the relations between the countries and the external centers of force and power, both Western and non-Western. We hope that in frames of our today's seminar, we would manage to make the analysis of the regional processes and the problems of the study of the regionalism in the whole, with a further study and evaluation of results, and we hope that the present seminar would help to find the right and most important directions of the cooperation, enlargement of active contacts and cooperation with the professors, scientists, and students of Russian and foreign universities, which are presented hereby, and also the popularization of the study carried out by the faculty and Department of Historian Studies of Non-Western Regionalism. Dear colleagues, the topics today are very acute and important, and I wish everyone fruitful reports, interesting questions, and fruitful discussions. Once again, Denise, your team and you personally, you do a great job carrying out such seminars, and wish everyone great success and many thanks for the organization of such event. Thank you. Thank you, Nikolai. Thank you so much. Dear colleagues, we are going to start, and today we have very interesting program. We are planning to finish today at 7:15. Mikhail Molchanov would be from Spain. He would join us from Spain. So, dear colleagues, just a couple of words as introductory ones, and then we move to the main direction, to the main body. Today we have very big conference, and we opened that in the center of Oriental literature together with the Russian State Library. And on one side, this is our traditional event, second scientific seminar on the regional studies. But on another side, this is one of the sections that would be part of a big conference which we carry out together with Moscow State University. And just a couple of words about some our outputs and the starting points, about what we are going to listen to, what we are going to hear, maybe some attitudes, because yeah, it's clear that the world is changing and that we have the shift of the powers, economic and political ones, to the east direction, eastwards, and that would reflect negatively the power of European Union as a global actor, which projects of its power on the spatial war operation, and the regionalism used to be European center, but the situation is going to change. And in Asia, we have two centers from the point of from the point of safety. This is Shanghai Organization. This is China and Russia, Russia and China, and we have also the center as ASEAN plus five. And if it is going to continue further, of course, that's a nuclear that the center of ASEAN centric regionalism and Yuan. And there is also understanding that if nothing would happen like a force major, then this ASEAN centric regionalism that would put a standard like 3 out of 4 technological superpowers like Korea, Japan, and China. They're members of REP and regulation of AI and so on and so forth. In perspective, that would be not European Union, which would have priority standards, but that would be REP, unless would happen some negative things connected to Taiwan conflict or this bipolarity, which can reflect REP development as well. Today, at our plenary session, we used to talk a lot about the combination, the cooperation of different international organizations in Eurasia and our department. My first report was, and Leonid Evgeny Grachikov had very good report on Chinese regionalism, and there was also a report from our partner Leonid Savin. And today, in our section, we have a set of reports, set of international organizations, and we are going to study them. And we start with Shanghai Organization, and we would have a look from Kyrgyzia, and we would have a look from Kyrgyzia. Then further, we would have 3 reports on the Eurasian Economic Commission, Eurasian Economic Union, and that is a pleasure for us that we would have the representative of Eurasian Economic Commission, the Council of the Commission, Alexander Hramova. We would also have Lukan Sakin from Kazakhstan. It's also about Eurasian Economic Union. That's also a great pleasure that we have colleague from Iran, Vida Yaguti, also Iranian outlook on Eurasian Economic Union. So we have 3 reports on this, and let alone the Shanghai Organization, we would have Kazakhstan initiative in the conditions of the new reality, what's happening to this initiative, does it change? And we would have Regina Sisoeva, who represents the International University of Astana from Kazakhstan. She is separate. That's a pity that we would not have reports on RCEP, maybe only in some comments, but we would not have a report about RCEP. But we have today Russia and ASEAN, and this is also Salamanca, Spain. Molchanov Mikhail, one of the leading international experts, global experts on Eurasian integration. And that's a great pleasure that we have a feedback from the Centers of International Studies of international institutions, Marina Larionova and Irina Popova. And we know that European Union is weakening and is getting weaker as a global actor, and it cannot project its global standards anymore. And there would be a very interesting topic about the Green Deal. Up to now, the European Union can do that, and on the example of the Green Deal, we would study and consider that. Well, dear colleagues, I kindly ask you to follow the time frame, 15 minutes, please, and also prepare the questions. Just be ready for that. You can write in a chat, you can raise your hand, or you can put a reaction in Zoom. So what else? In the reports, dear colleagues, we are interested in the connection, how it is real, and we're also interested in the geopolitical context, the actual one. Maybe some critical analysis on some things with the forecast for the future, with the forecast for the future development. And these are my introductory words. That's why let us start.
Dear colleagues, you have the possibility, right? There is a button to translate, right? You could choose language.
We
Russian.
have interpretation function. You can choose Russian and English. We kindly remind you about this. And we have also Russian language speakers, and we have also foreign participants. We have representatives from India, from Iran. And let us start then. And the first report, with a great pleasure, Yelena Gabuzarova. We introduce her from Kyrgyzstan Russian Slavic University. Yelena, 15 minutes. We would be glad to listen to you. If you have presentation, please, you can launch the presentation. You can share the screen.
Hello, dear colleagues. Thank you so much for this invitation. Thank you so much for the opportunity to take part in this very important discussion. And let me introduce myself. My name is Yelena. I'm Associate Professor of the Department of Political Science in Kyrgyz Russian Slavic University in Bishkek, the Kyrgyz Republic. And I want to switch off the video for good broadcasting of my presentation. My topic is devoted, my presentation is devoted to the growing role of the SCO in the forming multipolar world. After the end of the Cold War, a new international political and economic reality began to take shape. The political landscape gradually became more complicated due to the emergence of new actors and regional multilateral structures. The emergence of the SCO was a big geopolitical event in Eurasia. At the present stage, the SCO became an influential integration structure in world politics, ready to take its place in the new emerging structure of international relations. The reasons for the occurrence of the SCO. Of course, it was initiative from China. The SCO formed in 2001 on the basis of the Shanghai Five, and China had, I think that China had three main interests. The first one is to ensure regional security or to create the neighborhood belt. China wanted to protect its northwestern territories, especially Xinjiang. And that's why China wanted jointly to combat the three evils. The second interest is to create a basis for deepening regional economic cooperation. China was at the peak of its economic development. That's why Beijing was going to intensify economic cooperation with Central Asian countries. The third is the geopolitical interest. You know that after the collapse of the USSR, a geopolitical vacuum appeared in Central Asia. China wanted to play a more active role. And you know that in 2005, the SCO called for a USA military withdrawal from the region. Of course, the SCO has their own objectives. It is a multilateral organization. The participants collaborate in different spheres, in the sphere of economy, science, culture. They try to maintain the region's peace, security, and stability. The two main powers, leading powers in the SCO are China and Russia. They informally divided the functions between each other. For example, Russia is responsible for the security of the region, and China is responsible for the economical development of the region. The SCO has its own ideology. It is Shanghai spirit. Shanghai spirit is based on the following principles: equality, mutual benefits, mutual trust, consultations. For example, the participants make a decision based on a consensus. The participants are very different in politics, economy, in culture, but they show respect for the diversity of civilizations. And they are striving for joint development. Every member state has veto power, and the four Central Asian member states have equal status with China and Russia. Geopolitical advantage of the SCO. SCO consists of member states, observer states, dialogue partners, guest attendances. The SCO is recognized as one of the most important summits in the Central Asia region, where nations have strong interest in commerce, connectivity, and resource extraction. More than 60% of Eurasia land area, 40% of the world's population, and more than 30% of the world GDP are all accounted for by the SCO. SCO as an alternative to Western unilateralism. The members of the SCO defend the principles of the formation of a fair political world order. They seek to establish democratic, just, and rational economic international order. We can see the expansion of the SCO due to the desire of the nations collectively resist unilateralism. They are convinced that the world cannot be unified. Everyone should have the right to vote. The goals of participation in the SCO. Of course, the member states of the SCO have common goals, but they also have their own national interest. For example, Russia is looking for an opportunity to ensure the security of the southern borders and give an impetus to the development of the southeastern regions. China is looking for an opportunity to create a neighborhood belt, and of course, conditions for the implementation of economic and infrastructure projects. Central Asia countries, they are different. They have their own peculiarities, but they have a common interest in the SCO. First of all, it is the opportunity to get financial, economic benefits for their social economic development. India wants to implement economic and infrastructure projects primarily with the countries of Central Asia. Pakistan desires to implement energy and economic projects like CASA 1000, TEPI, China-Pakistan Economic Corridor. Iran wants to overcome international isolation. Why is the SEO so popular, so attractive in the modern world? Of course, it is open regionalism. Every country has opportunity to be the participant, to be the part of the SEO. There are no limits in participation. And cooperation is based on mutual interest, equality among participants. It is the elements of the Shanghai spirit, and Shanghai spirit is very popular basis for the integration. And the SEO is a new type of international relations. What does it mean? It means state-to-state relations and win-win cooperation. And of course, participation in the SEO gives participants the opportunity to influence the trajectory of the world politics and the economy in the future. And the SEO is the guarantor of Eurasian security and stability. And the main question, what about the future of the SEO? SEO will largely, SEO, of course, the future of the SEO depends on many factors. The SEO will largely depend on the ability to effectively solve global and regional problems. For example, the Afghan crisis. The participant of the SEO should have the desire to coordinate foreign policy positions and solidarity on issues of the regional and global agenda. The SEO can strengthen its international role by acting as a link between the Chinese Silk Road Economic Belt project and Eurasian integration. And in the context of anti-Russian sanctions, economic investment and financial cooperation within the SEO should be strengthened. And I think that it is very necessary to mention that bilateral relations should give way to multilateral cooperation. Thank you.
Спасибо большое.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your report. Dear colleagues, please, any questions so far or any comments, please do not hesitate. And Yelena, that would be a question or maybe a remark. Yeah, more question. You talk about the open regionalism, like Shanghai Organization. Where is the border of Shanghai Organization? The partners on the dialogue, we are having such countries as Egypt, for example, and this is already Africa. Egypt is an African country. And where is the border of Shanghai Organization? You say that it's an open regionalism, but where shows would end? That's the first question. Yes, thank you very much. Sorry, I cannot switch off my presentation. We can see you perfectly both in presentation, and we cannot do like you because you did it perfectly. Okay, thank you for the question. Well, it used to be considered that SEO would be mainly on the Central Asian region, and the borders will not go beyond. But we have seen the contrary situation. Yes, you are absolutely right. Now, African countries, Northern Africa and Asian countries, they express very high interest for participation in Shanghai Organization of Cooperation. And we also understand why, because generally this is an attempt to struggle against this unilateralism, and this Western standards struggle against it. Of course, it attracts the states, and that attracts the states in participation of Shanghai Organization. It is difficult to see It is difficult to say where the borders of Shanghai Organization, but I think that it would increase and enlarge the borders because there are many countries which desire to enter this organization, and let alone Egypt and Saudi Arabia, we have, which is planning to participate. And I think that Shanghai Organization would enlarge and grow, especially considering the modern context. Yes, thank you so much. In your comment, there was an interesting remark that the central place of Central Asia, the center of Central Asia, the place of Central Asia in Shanghai Organization, you have a feeling that how it is based and how it is kept. And the main place, the central place or the special place is given to Central Asia, of course. And that's also an interest of China and Russia both. And I have already told you that this is connected to the questions of safety. And if there would be no safety, there would be no future of Chinese Project One, Silk Way, One Belt, or Eurasian Economic Union, or Big Eurasia. They won't have future. That's why, yes, the geopolitical position of Central Asia plays a big role. Its transit potential, its resources. It's clear that the Central Asia has a special position. And in the 19th century, it was much spoken that Central Asia is a heartland, the heart of the land of Eurasia. Thank you very much, Elena. Dear colleagues, any questions, any comments so far, please? Well, there is also one more question. It's about the, you mentioned several times the economic dimension, the economic parameter of Shanghai Organization. That's in the sphere of safety. And what do you think the limit? How deep can Shanghai Organization work with the questions of economic cooperation? How do you estimate it? Yes, thank you very much for the question. Well, as I have already told you, the economic agenda in Shanghai Organization of Cooperation is pushed forward by China. And generally, of course, we talk about the perspectives of implementation of Chinese Project One Belt, One Way, and China spends a lot of money for this and invests a lot into the development of Central Asian countries. In my opinion, that would all depend on the resources, on financial economic opportunities of China. And in perspective, I think that the economic agenda of Shanghai Organization would be only reinforced. In parallel, we understand that the matters of safety, they would be also in the first place, because this is mutually connected things, especially if we talk about the present Afghan crisis, which must be solved, and that must be solved with the contact group of Shanghai Organization and Afghanistan. Thank you very much. Dear colleagues, if you have any remarks or questions, please write in the chat. Please raise your hand. Yelena, thank you very much for your questions, for your remarks, for your answers, and we move forward. And further, we talk about the Eurasian Economic Union, and with a great pleasure, I turn the floor to the first speaker, Dr. Alexander Kramov, advisor of the Eurasian Economic Commission. And Yelena, we kindly ask you to switch off your presentation. Okay, thank you so much. Alexandra, we see you. So we start with you on the Eurasian Economic Union, and there would be two more speakers from Kazakhstan and from Iran, their outlook, their opinion, and I would address you later a little bit more, because you look on the process from inside and you understand the process. So to have some more comments, dear colleagues, they look from a side, so that your outlook and how the look is combined from my side and from my side. Hello, dear participants of the conference. Just let me share my screen.
Презентацию видно, правильно?
I hope that you can see my presentation. Great. Let me stop the camera. Okay, I'm thankful for the organizers for the opportunity to make a speech today, especially Moscow State University. I also graduated from Moscow State University in the past, and I would warn you that in frame of the conference, I'm like a hybrid. On one side, I'm a representative of Eurasian Economic Commission. On another side, I'm a scientist, and I run studies. That's why, in some in some aspects, my position can be different to official Eurasian Commission, but I stand on the positions of Eurasian Partnership, and I protect also the idea of interests of all the participants. Today I'm going to talk about the big Eurasian Partnership in the context of the international safety in the European Eurasian macro-region. I would talk about the prehistory of the big Eurasian partnership. Why prehistory? Because the history has not started yet. This is just still a big idea. The first idea of continental cooperation was mentioned in the article for the German article by Vladimir Putin in the year 2010. He mentioned the opportunity of establishment of Europe from Lisbon to Vladivostok as the one transcontinental trading zone. Then the idea or definition of big Eurasia appeared in scientific by Michael Everston towards the Great Asia 2013. His concept of big Eurasia included all the countries of Europe and Asia in the frames of Eurasian subcontinent. It touched also the questions of mutual joint cooperation in the sphere of strategical safety, political dialogue, long-term social and economic problems, cultural values between. Let alone this, in the political and economic discourse, there was also the idea of big Europe, which was the idea of even in terms of Charles de Gaulle, but they actually were pretty much the same, but in the tension between Russia and Europe, which was on a peak after the year 2014, and the sanctions against Russia from Europe and America was called a turn to East. And as a result, in the year 2015, the idea of big Europe was transferred to the big Eurasian Partnership, where instead of European Union, the main partner of Eurasian Economic Union was considered to be China. As approval of the turn to East in the year 2015, in the frame of St. Petersburg Economic Forum, there was joint statement of Chinese Republic and Russian Federation about the construction of Eurasian economic cooperation and the Silk Way. And that was also start of close cooperation with China. And China now is our strategic partner, and the relations between Eurasian Economic Union and Chinese Republic are based on the Agreement of Trade Economic Cooperation, which entered into force since 2019. In this document, there were ideas of Eurasian integration and Chinese Initiative One Way, One Belt, and we have a joint commission for the implementation. We have also industrial cooperation, technical regulation, financial cooperation, custom clearance cooperation, and also business cooperation of Eurasian Union and China, mutual financing and logistic infrastructure, and also transport corridors of the export and import. For this goals, we have developed and approved the project Eurasian Agro Express, dedicated to the container transfers of agricultural products and food from China and back. The list of directions would be enlarged constantly, and its regularity can create the shorten the time frame of delivery up to 10, 15, 14 days. And also the movement of delivery of the goods also excludes the influence of the West to the transportation, while the oversea delivery is of a big risk. In the year 2021, the trade turnover between Eurasian and Chinese sides were exceeding 2019 almost 25%, and has exceeded $166 million. So the activities of Eurasian Union within the last years became a multi-vector. As a result of the year 2021, the share of Eurasian Economic Union in Eurasian Union became the share of 39%. The Asian Pacific region 36%, and only China has almost 20% share of our trade over. And we should say that the role of China in international trade is increasing significantly, but we should warn that just to run into hugs of China, it's a big risk about which you can get out of the analysis of Eurasian Economic Commission with a report of the strategy and development of Eurasian Union in Chinese Initiative One Silk Way One Belt. First of all, I express here the following risk as the access of the cheap and low quality products from China to Eurasian Union and structural degradation of the industry of Eurasian countries. Not many know, but when Eurasian Economic Commission and China started, China was interested in free trade zone, but of course we could not afford ourselves to make such a big step because in this case our products would be not competitive. Also, there is a risk of worsening of the ecological situation and increase of social tension as a result of implementation of the Project One Way One Belt in Eurasian countries, involvement of the Chinese minorities, and also territorial questions and the growth of xenophobia. And I would give an example of Canada and Greece. In these countries, Chinese minority have purchased a big share of property, and in Canada it's supposed, while it is tolerant country, that China is supposed to be even the threat for the national safety because owning a big share of property, they make influence on the political lobby of the country. In Greece, the purchase of the property is making influence on the prices, and now the students and the people who have not sufficient money, they cannot afford themselves to buy some property, and this is a big also political tension, also absence of compromises with the One Silk Way in the Eurasian countries, and the tariff and non-tariff barriers for the exporters of Eurasian countries to the Chinese side, and also increase of dependence on China, and the political weight of Eurasian Economic Union can go down in Eurasian Union. That's why I don't think that in our ambitions to become the center of force in multipolarity, Russian Eurasian countries would become the politically and economically fully dependent on China. That's why we would express the practical ways of Initiative One Way, One Belt as elements of one big Eurasian partnership in the spheres which can be pragmatic interest. First of all, this is coordination of strategies of economic development and the measures of the policy and the infrastructure of China, and mutual shutting down of the barriers and development of the measures of stimulation of the investment, the financial cooperation and digitalization. Our strategic goal is to increase the integration, and based on this, the update architecture of international economic relation. This idea is the basis of big Eurasian partnership. And today, under the big Eurasian partnership, there is a network of the dialogues between the key players of Eurasia, not only of the biggest national economies, but the regional organizations connected to each other with a flexible system of transport, logistic, telecommunication and financial infrastructures, joint projects and institutions. Because of this, special attention we pay to the combination of potential of Eurasian Economic Union and such integration formats as Shanghai Organization of Cooperation, which was already mentioned, the Association of Countries of Southeast Asia. With these structures, the Eurasian Economic Commission has signed the Memorandum of Cooperation, prepared the particular programs for cooperation, but it's important to have the holistic outlook with academic and scientific outlook. That's why such a conference as today is very important. On the Eurasian territory, we have very acute problems of international safety, and we have a lack of the international ways for solving of them. International organization needs to update and to involve new participants. And parallel, United States tried to create its mega-regional transatlantic, trans-Pacific groups, increasing geopolitical gap and lack of trust between Russia, China, and United States on another side. That's why creation of big Eurasian partnership, which involve maximum amount of the countries interested in safety, can neutralize several threats and to keep the principles of mutual cooperation instead of struggle for the resources and its influence. Let's consider the following aspects of Eurasian macro-region, which big Eurasian partnership should include in the agenda. First of all, this is economic safety, because by the establishment of the investment trade environment, the partnership can stimulate the economic growth and development of the region. That also would take down the level of the poverty and the increases the factor of stability. The second is political safety partnership can increase the dialogue and cooperation. That would also diminish the potential conflicts and to solve political stability. That is also sustainable development of region and safety on the border between struggle with trans-border and terrorism. The partnership can also prevent the regions for the regional safety. In conclusion, I would like to say that big Eurasian partnership, it is much spoken about, but now it's a time for the particular activities involving into the dialogue the interested countries. The start of the work of this initiative can be from the informal summits like BRICS. Moreover, now we have the necessity of discussion of future line of safety. In case of this activities, the West has to sit at the table of negotiations on equal terms. And that's why the establishment of big Eurasian partnership would be a catalyst of multipolar new world order and new frames of safety. Thank you for attention. I'm ready to answer the questions, if any. Thank you so much, Alexandra. I have a question. The next speaker asked, and there is a question in chat, and there is a question from Vladimir Belov, from our professor. But I hope that you can see the question in chat, that in Kazakhstan, to suppose that economic space Lisbon Vladivostok belongs to Nazarbayev as a part of concept of Eurasian integration of Gumilov Trubetsky Savitsky, is it right or no? I thank you for the question. I studied this quite a lot in frame of my thesis, and I would say that the concept of big Europe up to Euro belongs to Charles de Gaulle, and the moment when European integration was developing with a big speed. But in the Soviet Union, this concept was not positively perceived because there is part of Soviet Union was cut, only up to Urals was taken as a part, and further, this concept was newly born in the frame of the article of Vladimir Putin from Lisbon up to Vladivostok, considering the integration of integrations, the interaction of Eurasian Economic Union and European Union. As far as Nursultan Nazarbayev is concerned, to him belongs the new concept of Eurasian integration because in 1994 he read a lecture in Moscow State University where he suggested to make the establishment of the Eurasian Union, which actually are similar to Eurasian Economic Union, excluding the humanitarian and cultural part. But in the last document of strategic directions of Eurasian integration, which Eurasian Commission approved in the year 2020. There also the healthcare, sport, and education humanitarian directions were defined, which is a big shift in the part of integration. And that's why, in this essence, the concept of Nursultan it is developing in time. Thank you very much. Thank you so much. Yes, and Second, Mukan also thanks you for the answer. Today, in the first part, there was a plenary part, and Leonid Savin, there is a classic Eurasian heredity on Trubetskoy and Savitsky. It was much spoken today. And a little bit later, he would join us, and I think within an hour, he would join us today. But we have a question from Vladimir Belov. Vladimir, please. Yes, thank you very much, Denise. Dear Alexandra, it's easy for me to address you like this. Very interesting, very precisely structured, and you explained entirely, but I have two small questions. The first one is connected to which extent the digitalization as a direction of the big Eurasia is meaning the overcoming of diversity on digital formats of the countries. I mean, is there any activity supposed for the systematic unification or harmonization on these formats? Like a week ago on the International Forum on Digitalization of the organization's International Center of Scientific Information, there was Academy of Science, we discussed this, and there was an initiative about this question to accept the code of digital code. And the first question, somehow the big Eurasian partnership, are they ready for such work? And is it possible to expect some particular steps into this direction with attraction of experts? And the second one is connected that the big partnership, well, President Nazarbayev did not use this terminology, and the second one is up to Vladivostok. The topic was mentioned not only in the well-known speech of our president in the 90s, it was also was much spoken by others. That's why initiative was claimed in 2015. So the question is, does it cover Africa? Because if one of the directions of activity with China is highlighted as interaction of Eurasian Economic Union and one way, one belt of international Chinese initiative, considering that this initiative up to Cape Town, then the big Eurasia, does it stretch upon Cape Town, or now it's not decided? Well, thank you very much for the question. The first is about digitalization. Now, even in the countries members of Eurasian Economic Union, there are different levels of digitalization, but the Commission carries out the work on creation of integrated system of Eurasian Economic Union, where digitalization is used in frames of custom cooperation, custom clearance of the loads, and in this aspect, of course, all the membrane countries are on one level, and that can be used also as the interaction with China and other participants of trade from the side of Asia and all the interested countries. So it's like an applied aspect. Sorry to interrupt you. That's on the cross borders of countries. So it's not in frames of international corridors as the space of all points of growth. Integrated information system is used for this, but also we have informational systems without borders which can find the work, find the job places on one unified portal. Okay, I understand. That's clear. Thank you. So up to now, this question is some digitalization for the countries. It's not in the agenda, our initiative. Yes, the Eurasian Economic Commission has an office of digital initiatives, and I think that for them that would be really interesting. Can you write me in the chat some contacts? Maybe you can later more particularly discuss it. Yes, and there was the second question about the big Eurasian partnership. If we harmonize it with the Chinese initiatives, one way, one belt, uh, what about Africa? Well, big Eurasian partnership does not have any institutional creation. That's why its borders is not clear and they are vague. It's good to make everyone participating who is interested, but I think that this interesting format of cooperation is ASEAN regional form of partnership with other countries, and I think that if such institutional preparation would get big region partnership, then with Eurasian Union, China, other active participants or partners, such as bilateral, multilateral format, as Africa and Latin America, they can also join the dialogue format in this union. Yes, thank you so much. Thank you very much, Alexander. Two more questions from my side. The topics are very actual. One, the first question, you're talking about the harmonization with China, and with the plenary part, I was making a report. In my opinion, if we talk about non-Western organizations, there is a lack of OSD, because OSD and its functions, they are not so remarkable or widely expressed, but this is the international combination, and this is someone is naming this aerospace industry, someone space, and someone is aircraft industry, separately talking. And this terminology, of course, this is statistics and a statement of whose industry is more developed, and then there is a soft coordination, not just to open the markets, but the Chinese products would not kill the Eurasian industry. But for that, we should know a lot of information about each other and what OSD does on our general standards, national statistics, to which extent this work is it already carried out with China and other Eurasian countries, or that would be a part of future statistics and soft coordination before the industrial cooperation. Thank you very much for the question. The part of the statistics, yes, there is such a problem, and this is more connected to the ratings. There is a lack of rating agencies, own ones, because many of them are political ones and they are on the West. And the rating make an influence on investment attractiveness of the countries. That's why this aspect we have a lack of. But as far as this soft coordination in the frame of Eurasian Union, we have working group on implementation of the plan on the agreement with China. This is soft mechanism, but I would say that here more there is a lack of initiatives of Eurasian Economic Union, because first of all we have Eurasian Bank of Development, we have Asian Bank of Development, but big initiatives, big investment, logistic, infrastructural projects, we have a lack of them, and China is ready to suggest many of such projects from our side. We do not have the diversity of them, but Eurasian Agro Express, this is the brightest example. But we would like to have more initiatives from business in this part. We have the mechanisms and we must use them. In part of the assembly of information, it is not so good to see, but Evgeny Vinokurov, this is Eurasian Foundation of Financing, and on the Eurasian space from all the organizations talking about the rating, we see this statistic decoupling, and many international organizations, not the whole statistics they have, so we should have our own statistic, we should create our own statistics, and he is doing this. And the second question, you mentioned it, though you are for Eurasian Economic Commission, but we were talking about the big Eurasian partnership. But in your speech, several times it was mentioned the word safety, and safety. And the question is, if we talk about some harmonization or split, well, there is different international organizations, and where the country would go to solve this or that problem. And Shanghai Organization, there is a memorandum for cooperation signed already. The cooperation with you, we have a clear distribution of the obligations, of the competences, or it is somehow differently. Can you comment on this? Well, we have a dialogue with Shanghai Organization in accordance to the memorandum, and mainly this is connected to the exchange of opinion. But we must understand that Eurasian Economic Union is first economic one. It's in charge of the economic safety. Shanghai Organization, this is provision of safety mainly in Central Asian region connected to the terrorism and drug trafficking. I see that in the future our close cooperation in the format of the partnership, but there would be crossing and maybe more active influence on Eurasian region. I know that now, as in Eurasia and Europe, there is actively a question of provision of future lines of the safety, and there is a big demand on this. We can use it for the opening of the dialogue and start of the dialogue. And let's say to outline our safety, our own interests, and not being dependable on China, but for the mutual cooperation with China, unification. As on St. Petersburg Forum, Minister of Economic Development of Eurasian Economic Commission, Sergei Glaizev, the more sanctions are against us, the faster we turn our wheels to east. But at least such a remarkable step and active work on the harmonization with other countries of West, it won't be worse. That, of course, would influence on the provision of safety in the world. Well, thank you. Several times you mentioned that safety, and there is a concept is also that Russia is a provider of safety, provider of the sovereignty. That's also energy safety, food safety, informational safety, and as I understand that part of these directions, there is a work for Eurasian Economic Commission as well. Yes, the economic safety, I mean these directions, energy, information safety, because if you look on the department, on the there is in energy and digitalization and industrial safety. That's why I choose all these economic directions into this sphere. Thank you so much. We would ask you, the next two speakers, if they're going to talk about Eurasian Economic Commission, if they would say something wrong. Unfortunately, I must have warned you before the conference we have a big load on St. Petersburg Forum. That's why I would have to leave you. Well, I agree. Yeah, thank you so much. Sakin Mukan, please, your presentation. Alexander, thank you so much once again. Good day. It's my turn, right? Yep. Well, it's up to you. Yes, we can. Well, I have sent the organizer the presentation. Yeah. We have your presentation. We would share it on the screen. Just 1 second. Let me share that on the screen.
Значит, вот ваша презентация, да, и
This is your presentation,
да, то есть я запустил, вот,
and I launched it from the very start. Good evening, everyone, dear head of the meeting. That's a great pleasure for me that once again I make speech on front of a Russian audience and always new thoughts. The previous report was very interesting about how the concept of Eurasian Economic Union and generally what are the thoughts I would like more put an accent on how in Kazakhstan we consider this union and how it influences on the economic situation. And I would like to warn that I'm not the economic specialist, and there would be more analytics, some definite numbers. They are absent because I'm not good. I'm not specialized in this. Thank you so much. And next slide, please. And there is a question: was this idea? When we used to talk about the present year 2023 and how it is explained and shown, and because I put more accent on the communication, on how mass media and the expert community in Kazakhstan are introducing this, and you know that in Kazakhstan the expert community it's polarized about how all this should be shown and how to interpret, to explain all this. But the main thing, the main accent is on that we must understand that the last activities, for example, at the end of May, that there was the meeting of the Economic Council and the heads of the states, where at this meeting, and there was an idea mentioned from Lukashenko that our Eurasian Union started at kitchen of Putin. Lukashenko also highlighted that at that moment, whatever tried Russia to make the Eurasian character, the former president of Kazakhstan kept us in frames of economic union. So we would say, as particular, I agree to the previous speech maker about that the remark which was mentioned previously from Lisbon to Vladivostok. This is, and that was supported or caught a little bit later, but in 1994, when Nazarbayev was making a speech, it was mostly based on the concept of Savitsky, and at that time, our Kazakhstan expert community, governmental oriented, they attracted such experts as Dugin, Panarin for the promotion, and there were tendencies like this. And I remember that in the end of the 90s and the start of the 2000s, when I studied at the faculty, and the concept of Eurasian, of this three theoretical plus Dugin Panarin and the Faculty of International Relations, they were so well promoted, and we were reading, and we understood that Kazakhstan, with the main ideologist of our President Nazarbayev, that Kazakhstan, this is Eurasian country, and moreover, more concept of this Gumilev, Savetsky, Trubetsky, they're more the head of, in order to understand more the essence of Eurasian integration. And in the year 96 there was Eurasian National University established. Astana was not a capital at the time, but it is clear that Astana as a center of Eurasia in expert community, there were more discussions, there were more advertisement, and I would like to highlight that such theoreticians as Dugin and Panarin were invited, and they had more discussions on this. And I would like to highlight this. Why I'm talking about this? Because with the recent statement of President Lukashenko, the expert community did not entirely understood, because at the kitchen of President Putin, what that discussed since 2000, but and maybe that's the idea of the 90s, it was a different one, but well, the age of Nazarbayev is in the past, and anyway, there are expert communities, academic communities, and they were a little bit of surprised. That's why the previous speechmaker asked, and I received an answer. But thank you so much. The next slide, please. If put an accent on the state of and the role of Kazakhstan in Eurasian Economic Union and its national interest, and what are the lessons of Kazakhstan from this? This statement of Tokayev his phrase about that in the Eurasian Union there is the Belarus. Inside the Eurasian Union there is one state, and even the nuclear weapon is one for two. Put an accent that yes, as soon as at the Soviet Union, and we have better experience of Semipalatinsk, and we were joined to Budapest Memorandum, and the policy of Kazakhstan is dedicated to be initiatives on development of. So this causes particular fear of there is the speech of Tokayev causes that we shouldn't make a policy on the economic union, and let be friends and to work closely between each other, and we have of course geopolitical challenges, and we must say that the economic benefit is on the first place. And I also would like to highlight such a moment that as a result, the results of year 2022, the inflation in Kazakhstan is 20.6%, and if we talk about the year 2011, it was 8%. So we see that the inflation within the year 2022, it is worsening. This is the highest parameter in Eurasian Union, and there are some external factors, and because of this, the question is about the expert community. Arises the question how this union is beneficial or not, because I cannot say for Ukraine because it is in a state of the conflict and which has inflation less than Kazakhstan. I would not give a number, I do not remember it, but it is 13-14%, something like this. And then there is a question, but even Ukraine being in a state of the conflict, and we as Kazakhstan living under the concept of the new Kazakhstan, when we have the political transformation, and now, after the parliament elections, these deputies, they initiated such a draft of the law of the return of the actives from abroad, and so that the return of the assets which were stolen within the rule of Nazarbayev. And there are peculiarities of. There is a question whether we need Eurasian Union and organization of the OTKB, and President Tokayev understanding all the geopolitical situation, that there would be geopolitical pressure on Kazakhstan, that our people send some petitions. Of course, leaving the integration process, that would be big economic loss, worse than being a part of economic union. I do not take the experience of Brexit as an experience, because that's another situation. Kazakhstan has a question of another level, the absence of the ocean access. Thank you very much. And the next slide, please. And there are several topics of what are the benefits. There would be minuses, but what are the three benefits of main benefits for Kazakhstan being a part of Eurasian Union? And if we have economic specialists, they can correct. And if I talk not of the economic language, but Kazakhstan, it had to be parallel in the Eurasian Union and to be a member of World Trade Organization. And there are also exclusions that the goods which are of the imported one with less promotion, that if we talk that the China is a member of World Trade Organization, Turkey is the member of World Trade Organization, then what we see that the goods which are on the territory of Kazakhstan, they are not expensive from the point of consumer. And I would say that I am not as a speaker, but we can feel when we go to the markets, when we go shopping or we buy products, we say that the Russian products, after the sanction policy, and generally also the last years, they have increased the prices, and we feel that. The second idea is that the second benefit is that when Kazakhstan goods, they go to the territory of Eurasian Union, not raw materials, but non-raw materials and goods. They are of small amount. They are either joint with Turkey or China, but our own goods, we don't have much of them, and they go to the space of Eurasian Union. And the third one, it's more about the digitalization, because that the banking sector and telecommunication sectors, it's more wide client basis. Russian economy, when on territory of Eurasian Union, Kazakhstan can make some bank transactions, and it turned out not to be as it was expected by the sanction policy. The next slide, please. And now, what are why people of Kazakhstan are not satisfied with to be the member of Eurasian Union? This is high deficiency of the mutual trade in the Eurasian economic space between the Russian market is bigger, the capacity is bigger, and the goods, they actually went to territory of Kazakhstan, and it started to compete with local producers, and plus with the main suppliers, Chinese and Turkey goods. The population is not big, the country is big, and that's why it's not the criticism against Eurasian Union, it's criticism against Kazakhstan generally, because since the year 2015, as it entered into force, because of the high level of corruption and some kleptocratic situations or nepotism inside the country, there is the split of business into the clans and groups, and as a result of what there are particular economic losses, and this argument is not more the critics against Eurasian Union, it's more critics against the internal policy of Kazakhstan. And the second point is that there are many non-tariff barriers, unfair barriers, because Kazakhstan imports particular goods, and Rospotrebnadzor would say that it does not correspond to the standards, and there is a policy of double standards. It exists. I can give it as example of my own brother, who is a truck driver, and he brought the watermelons from Kazakhstan to Russia, and there are questions on the border on the sanitary rules and so on and so forth, and that exists. Plus, the project KTK, which made very strong influence on that the incomes of Kazakhstan, they went down because the pipeline does not function. And I would like to support President Tokayev. And he addresses his friends of Moscow University, President Aliyev, to transfer oil through Azerbaijan. That started to function not like KTK, but to which extent, yes. And the third point is very important, dear colleagues, because we must understand that since 2010, 2015, this custom union, then the Eurasian Economic Union, the goal was a diversity or diversification of the economy. This is to go aside from our dependence on raw material and to produce more products, but that did not happen. And one of the problems, January year 22, when the prices on the gas went up and the whole world knew what happened later. So this product, that did not happen in the essence which was initially supposed to be. And we must highlight. And what happened to KTK? Kazakhstan was not ready for this. That made influence on our inflation. And the last point is the Western sanctions against Russia after February of year 2022. Yes, that is very sad, and I just give you one example talking about a simple language without any expert analysis. We, for example, we used to have McDonald's since 2015. This McDonald's was functioning, and independent that Kazakhstan is good in meat production, McDonald's had its own factory in Orenburg, and because of the sanction policy, they left from Orenburg, and now the question appeared what they are going to do. They started to say that let's buy your meat. No, we will not buy your meat. It does not correspond to the standards and so on so forth. And it happened so that they turned down their activity, and everyone was saying that, yeah, because of the secondary sanctions and so on. But no, but they clearly explained that the factory was located in Orenburg, and from Orenburg this meat was imported to Kazakhstan, and they did the burgers. And the funny example of that, okay, they left from the Kazakhstan market. We don't have McDonald's in Kazakhstan now. We thought there would be, instead of Russian, there would be Russian producer, Точка и Вкусно, and there was local businessman purchased this and is making the same taste, the same ingredients as McDonald's, but on the franchisee, another one, but the same taste, and the prices are the same. So it's a very interesting example. And the final slide. Yes, and this is international trans-Caspian route. This clearly seen that these pipelines, how they go, and I mean that that the project of Caspian pipeline, it was a reliable one for us. And now through Azerbaijan, and these are pipelines, and the export goes to Europe. Thank you very much for attention. I kindly apologize for expert analysis, but I tried to explain with a simple language my thoughts. Thank you very much for attention. Thank you very much for your comments. And you're a specialist in communication. There is a cut of the public opinion in Kazakhstan. Yep. And in many aspects, it's I should say it's a little bit of I would compare it what used to be in Ukraine in 2012, 2013, where the set of the problems and the colleagues from Ukraine, they arrived. There were difficulties, there are such tariffs and we need to take them down, and there are some problems on the custom clearance with this and that, and they were understood. But on another side, there is the channeling of the protest in the part that there should be Eurasian Union accused that tariffs and diversification and the inflation is high. So is the Eurasian Union is to be is the goal, but this is the work with the public's opinion. There are quite alert things, and in plenary when we met, and recently in Uzbekistan we made the expert session, and there's really alarming things. The situation is difficult in Central Asia. We understand that on one side there is a continuation of integration of countries of Central Asia into European regional project. There is deepening the cooperation with European Union, with other foreign organizations. And Russia stopped this cooperation in the year 2014, partially in the year 2022 fully. And Kazakhstan has this enhanced partnership agreement. It came into force and it's deepening and deepening. But on another side, we understand that there is also the orientation to China, non-Western agenda. So there are contradictions which cannot be solved, and I have a feeling that there is a particular deepening of the crisis, but we hope that these contradictions would be peacefully solved. Because according to there are quite alarming things. And we have a question. Our active participant from Italy is a student with our students. He has a friendship. Matteo Malina, please. You can say that in English or in Russian, doesn't matter.
Спасибо за представление.
Thank you very much. And how do you see the future cooperation between Kazakhstan and Russia in the field of ecology, new energy? Well, I see the cooperation between Kazakhstan and Russia. Can you repeat? The fields are economy and renewable resources. Yep. Yes, ecology and ecology and renewable energy. Thank you so much. Well, very good question. Thank you so much for this. It's very actual one for us. There are several answers. The first is the construction of a nuclear power plant which would be in peaceful goal used on the territory of Kazakhstan. And now there is a discussion. Russian, Chinese, or Korean, there are three companies making negotiation with Kazakhstan government about the construction of nuclear power plant on territory of Kazakhstan. And this is who would receive this construction because Tokayev announcement the previous year was clearly that it's time for Kazakhstan to construct the nuclear power plant. But the question, for me it's not clear about one thing. Within 30 years of independence, we have the set of specialists who were learning in West, in Russia. These are the specialists who can construct. But why Russian, Korean and French companies, they make negotiation on construction of it? It's not clear for me. It's external multi-vector policy of Kazakhstan who would suggest more, or I don't know, this the first thing. And I refer to the thing that the Russian companies would get it. So then on east of Kazakhstan would construct this station. The second moment is that between Kazakhstan and European Union, we have the development of the green economy. And it works. And how it works? It works in the oil regions where the transnational companies, they pump out oil. In this direction with Russia, I do not see it. If we talk about the green economy and so on. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And
у вас, Яуникес, у вас вопрос, да?
yeah, Yaunikas, you have a question? Yeah, we have Yaunikas, the representative of our department. Thank you very much for the speech makers. Very interesting topic which was discussed. How in Kazakhstan was the speech of the president interpreted? As I understand, I understood that Kazakhstan, in particularly, President of Kazakhstan perceived well the cooperation between Russia and Belarus in this way that, and the other countries should follow it. I understand like this, but what I heard today means that, on contrary, Kazakhstan is a little bit aware of this attitude and development of the events. That's why maybe the report makers can tell us and how generally this speech is in Kazakhstan. I mean, well, my thought is in Kazakhstan perceived normally. How I can explain? 70% of Kazakhstan are from Kazakhstan. 15% of population are Russians. Further, we have Ukrainians in Uzbekistan, and moreover, in the year 2021, according to the initiative of President of Turkey Erdogan, it was established the organization of Turkish countries, where this 6 countries of the Turkey origin, they are full members of this organization, and independent to that President Erdogan tries to convince Kazakhstan government that other members of organization of Turkey to give the membership of the Northern Cyprus. Everyone kept silence on this, and Mr. Tokayev was saying that not we recognize it, and if we recognize and acknowledge Northern Cyprus and include it, then we need to South Ossetia, Abkhazia, Donetsk and Lugansk Republic, Taiwan, Kosovo, and so on and so forth. That's why it's not in the national interest of Kazakhstan, but as far as how it's perceived or how in other countries of CIS countries in Belarus and Russia, that Tokayev is not going and Kazakhstan is not going to enter the state of Belarus and Russia. This is obvious factor and obvious thing. And this is obvious things which are not a little bit acceptable for the cultural diversity of Kazakhstan. And President Tokayev clearly explained that even one nuclear weapon for two, it means that Mr. Tokayev, he was standing with Nazarbayev ahead of initiative of the peacekeeping initiatives, and this nuclear weapon for Kazakhstan, it is unacceptable, and this is acceptable for the Budapest Memorandum of 1994. Thank you very much. Thank you so much. We have the third report on Eurasian Union, and then we come to Regina. With a great pleasure, I would like to invite our speech maker from Iran.
Это Исламский университет Азад, Иран.
This is Islamic Azad University. Vida, please, the floor is yours.
Could you hear me? Right, the floor is yours. You could demonstrate your presentation. Yeah. Nice to meet you. Yes, Mike. Microphone. Could you turn on? Mic. Well,
okay. Hello, audience. I'm Vida Yaqub, Director of Political and Society Group of AFPAC in Center of Middle East Strategic Study of Iran. Thank you for your invitation. Can you see PowerPoint? Excuse me.
Yes, we can.
Yes, we can see. It's of a small size. Can you make it larger? Can you make it bigger?
The title of my lecture in this section, the Eurasian Economic Union, Challenge and Achievements.
Is it possible to make a size, a bigger size? Можно укрупнить картинку.
Can you make the picture of a bigger size? Sorry for interruption.
Да, вот крупнее. То границы.
Наверное, давайте так оставим, да, я боюсь, что...
Ну, видимо, да.
I guess we leave it as it is and we continue presentation.
Профессор, может мне демонстрируем? Или я, если хотите?
Ну, можем, да. Если вы скажете, да, если...
Yes, if Vida would permit, then you can make a full screen.
Was так.
Нет, осталось. Ну хорошо, оставляем как есть.
Well, okay, we'll leave it as it is, no problem.
Как-то мало. Ну, я тоже могу продемонстрировать, да, но я боюсь, что у
You
меня
can. I don't-
Ну, не знаю, коллеги, давайте я продемонстрирую, что ли, тоже для разнообразия, да. Ну,
Well, I can share that, but
Отлично.
ага, да. Мгм. Вида,
okay.
да.
Vida, we can start.
Вида, пожалуйста, да.
Yes, Vida, please. We are waiting for you. We can start the presentation.
Vida, the floor is yours. Could you start your intervention, please?
Vida, can you start?
Мгм. Вида у нас сейчас выпадала, да, сейчас она подключается опять, да, вот, ага.
We are waiting for Vida. Vida, please.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome, yeah.
The Eurasian Economic Union, EEU, between Armenia, Belarus, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, and Russia is the most developed. A situation of regional economic integration among post-Soviet states, as it reaches 9 years anniversary, it's time to assess its principal achievements, failures, and challenges. The EU has international legal personality and enforces its own system of union law. The mistake-based EU court ensures the uniform application of EU law by member states and union bodies. It consists of 2 judges from each member state serving a 9 years term and appointed by the Supreme Council. From its establishment in 2015 until the end of 2019. The EEU Court adopted 33 ruling, 15 of them on application brought by economic entities. 17 these include company and natural persons registered as individual enterprises either in a member state of a board. Most applications concern EU customs, tariff, and non-tariff regulation.
Next slide, right?
Next, please. Okay. The EU as idea Eurasianism, the idea is not clearly defined geography or ideologically, at least for broad interpretations are in use today. Far-right ideologies such as Alexander Dugin see Eurasianism as both global campaign agents, the West, and process of non-imperial, neo-imperial, regional integration centered on Moscow. Some choose of this anti-Western thinking can be seen in official policy, though his influence should not be exaggerated. A more moderate position espoused by some Russian officials and analysts, though returning nationalist overtones, sees Eurasianism as a way for Russia to reassert its international role. For this advocate of Eurasian integration, the EU is a way for Russia but to pivot to Asia and to reconcile with Europe on its own terms. More liberal EU advocates reject nationalist versions and emphasize pragmatic link between Eurasian integration and the wider international economic system, East and West. Promulgated by Presidents Nursultan Nazarbayev in numerous publications is either theory. This varied interpretations from autarkic new imperialist anti-liberal ideology to framework for inter-ethnic cooperation and economic integration make Eurasianism a highly fixable ideology. EU members can support integration while glossing over fundamental foreign policy difference. But this makes it difficult to agree a coherent path for the EU developments. Next slide, please. Thank you. The EU as political project, if this its ideological framework is disturbed, so to is the EU's geopolitical significance, while Russian officials have to disguise the importance of the EU to their vision of Russia as a great power. Belarusian and Kazakh officials repeatedly stress that the EU is an economic initiative. Free of overt political commitments. the tension between these views is perhaps the central challenge faced by the EU and will determine its future direction. There are three main geopolitical aspects to the Russian concept. First, President Putin has frequently argued that the international system is breaking into a geopolitical zone, a version of the idea of multiple polar world, and that EU should be a one such polar zone. Eurasian integration, he argue, is a chance for the entire post-Soviet space to become an independent center for global development rather than remaining on the outskirts of Europe and Asia. Russian officials continue to see the West as a destabilizing actor in Eurasia, seeking to undermine a friendly regime. This argue for a more politically integrated EU capable of resisting such influence. Secondly, the Russian leadership with the EU as a mechanism to prevent neighbors being absorbed into rival regional blocs. Particularly the EU Eastern partnership, but also potentially Chinese-led project. Thirdly, an even more ambitious wave of the EU is as the core of a wider regional grouping, greater Eurasia, extending from Murmansk to Shanghai. In June 2016, President Putin announced the support for a more extensive Eurasian partnership involving the EU and countries with which we already have close partnership: China, India, Pakistan, and Iran, but also including the EU. Much of this is still just rhetoric, but idea for future cooperation with China, India, and Iran are common future of Eurasian thinking. A slide, next slide, please. Yes, this is structure, Eurasian economic bloc. For more people in the region, the EU will be measured by its impact on daily business, trade, and labor migration. Its long-term successes will depend on its ability to build effective situation, make progress on trade, liberalization, and boost economic prosperity. So far, it has had little positive impact. Trade fell by almost 26% inside the bloc in 2015, and by 34% with other countries in New Year's. In the decisions of in situations, figures were worsened by currency volatility and low oil prices. But the economic problem undermined confidence in the bloc, and trade barriers were introduced. Between some member states as they trade to protect their domestic markets. Unlike previous regional incentives, the EU has a potentially powerful supranational body mandate to overall narrow national interest in agreed trade policy areas. The Eurasian Economic Commission, EEC, has a well qualified staff of over 1,000 specialists at its Moscow headquarters, but is often sidelined by national leaders who continue to manage economic disputes through political deals rather than agreed rules and process. Lastly, model, it's on its Brussels counterpart, the EEC is headed by then members of the collegium, or two from each member state. Each in practice, decisions are usually by consensus achieved through long decision with national agencies, either directly or in
I am sorry, probably 5 minutes left. Okay, 5 minutes.
Okay.
Mhm.
Second, next slide, please. Next. And next. Obstacles to the EU single markets. Well, therefore, in summary, there are limited and weakness as follows. Next, please. The lack of union identity, coherence in the structure of members. For example, the EU lag behind the developed competitors in the areas of development of sciences, innovation, technical and technology, In the EU countries, there are high index of corporation, bureaucracy, and clinicians. The interested structure are not completely coordinate and national legislation of the EU members are not harmonized. There is a strong depend on the EU economy from external factors such as economic sanction of the Western countries of on member states. And in order to determine the prospect of regional economic organization, it's necessary to apply the SWOT analysis method. The SWOT analysis is a research method to identify internal and external environment factors of organization, and its division into four categories. Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Next. No, it's another.
Strengths, right?
Or the conclusion, please.
Ага. Мгм. Мгм.
Thank you. To date, the EU has failed to achieve the breakthrough its advocates promised. Multi-pay often contradictory identities make it difficult to develop and coherent policy acceptable to all members. Developing 5 key areas will decide whether the EU become a successful regional body. One, openness to the outside world. 2, a shift away from geopolitical. 3, a focus on governance. 4, an emphasis on social welfare and migration. 5, improved situations. Thank you.
Ага. Thanks a lot. У нас один вопрос, да, we have one question. Сакен Мукан, вы хотели вопрос задать?
We have one question. Saken Mukan, please, you have question. And yes, please, we kindly ask the colleagues to keep the time frame because we are a little bit running out of time. The first question from Saken.
Thank you very much, Professor.
Спасибо. Спасибо большое, профессор.
The Eurasian Economic Union and a collective security treaty organization. Just have one question from the Iranian perspective. Yeah, what is the public opinion of the Iranians? Yeah, are there any kind of the public opinion surveys? The relations towards these two international organizations, and this is the first question. And second questions, are there any kind of the preconditions that Iran would be able to be a member of these two organizations, taking into account that the Iran is under the sanctions for a long time? Thank you. Is it clear, my two questions?
Vida.
Vida, can you hear us? There were two questions. I think that Vida is okay. Then okay, yeah, yeah. It's some difficulties with connection. We have two questions left to Vika, but yeah, she is a little bit of falling out sometimes from time to time. But if Vida would come back, we would address her back. Well, let's go forward, dear colleagues, and we have Regina. We have Regina, Professor Regina Sisoyeva. She is Doctor of Philosophy, International Astana University. The regional security issues, because the initiative was at time of Nazarbayev presidency, but how it is developing now and after all the changes. Yes, please. Good evening, dear colleagues. I hope that you can hear me. Yes. Yes, many thanks. I would have a small presentation. I would like to congratulate all the Russian colleagues with the Day of Russia. And if you can hear that we have the meeting in the embassy because of the Day of Russia, and I congratulate also the colleagues on Shanghai Organization of Cooperation, because today there are 22-year anniversary of Shanghai Organization. I would have a short presentation on the meeting of the cooperation and to talk about the myth or hopes that this is a big organization. You need to understand that this is the conference on interaction, and it's a period on when this forum, it turns into the organization. Though initiative is 30 years or even more, only this idea started to be. That's why we have a conference on the measures of trust in Asia. And what is interesting, there are 28 member states. It joins such countries as Pakistan and India. And it shows that this is in Asia, and the main condition that the part of the territory should be in Asia. And as it is known, in Kazakhstan there is a small part of territories in Europe, and the most part of the population lives in Asia. That's why the headquarters is in Astana, and this is the only organization which has a headquarter in Astana, because in Astana we don't have many organizations, there are representatives, but the headquarters only of this. And to the year 2025, when it would be implemented the initiative of a financial market of Eurasian Union, when the headquarters would be in Almaty, but the organization has partners, other organizations. The summit in October 22, Eurasian Union became the observer, and the Association of Kazakhstan Folks, and also Shanghai Organization, SCO also, and also SCO Reds, and United Nations, and also 9 observer states. And it's also interesting that Belarus or United States, they cannot be members of our organization, but because they are not in Asia, but they can be observers. In the Assembly of Turkish States, Organization of Migrations, and if we explain briefly about CICA, and this is the analog, and the same story is about the, it is similar to as the Council of on the Safety in Europe, OSCE, in 1975, and after that, in the 90s, it turned into the organization of OSCE. The same way is going CICA. And now, for example, CICA. There was a meeting in the embassy of Russia right now, and the story is the same. It's in the story of CICA is similar to OSCE, and from the same definitions, that's about the international law, and we see that how now in the world many Western countries, that the basis of the international law, they do not keep it, but we hope that in the CICA it would be different. And the demands of the United Nations we follow. And the 5th of October, this is the day of CICA, but as far as the main principles are concerned, there's the principles of international law, such as the peaceful solution of the arduous economic cooperation, rights of people, and the territorial integrity. So all the principles of international law and rights. As far as the cooperation in the field of economy, this is the council. So on the forum, when I was preparing my presentation, I read the speeches of the president, which were in the previous summit in October. There were 12 member countries, and everyone was talking about his view of the international policy. And Pakistan, for example, was talking about 3 million of the immigrants. Belarus was talking about sanctions, and there were much spoken about Afghanistan. So this is the meeting where the head of states can show their position. As far as the main meetings are concerned, it all started in the 1999, and the well-known summit was recently in October 22. As far as the history, the idea itself was mentioned in 1992 by the first president of Kazakhstan Republic, Nazarbayev, and then for a long time this initiative stayed as initiative. In 1999, that was the first ministerial meeting. After that, there was the first summit, though the organization and the initiative was from Kazakhstan, but all the summits they were held in Almaty. 2 summits there was Tajikistan, also in Turkey, also one summit, and the first time in Astana. So not all the summits are held in Kazakhstan, or it was also in Shanghai. And there is a period when there is a transformation of this organization just from the conference, from the meeting on the high level into a real organization. So there is also a secretariat and general secretaries of the organization, and as far as the documents are concerned, there is a declaration to be considered which have a combining nature. It's binding nature. It's mainly declarations, but thanks to them the countries can explain their position and discuss it. And as far as the summit is concerned, which used to be in October of the year 2022 in Astana, the main achievements are that the first was decision to transform this meeting into the organization. Then it was also developed the plan of the initiative of the declaration of the usage of the information technologies, so that they won't be used again in terroristic aims. Or at the present moment, we must say that we don't need to wait for a lot from this organization. It's just not even organization, it's just the conference. In Astana we have the headquarters. There are not many representatives, and still there is observers on the elections, the peacekeeping initiatives. Of course, it's not like OSCE, it would be in the future, but from my point of view, I see more applied way of CICA. It's like a meeting or conference where we discuss the main questions. In Asia, the main question is the problem of Afghanistan, where really scary things happen, and this is not far from Kazakhstan. This is very close to the borders of Central Asia. And then we maybe would discuss it on the highest level, and to show this Asian option of the solution of the problem, because we say that European and American option, it was not successful as they tried to solve the problem. And from my point of view, I think that we started already to talk about the pipeline, Caspian pipeline. It would also be good that when in the frames of this organization, there would be informational safety. So in Kazakhstan, we see that informational safety, this is part of hybrid war, and this is big makes a very big influence on the population. And the informational safety in Kazakhstan, it's not quite good, just because there are 22,000 of different non-governmental organizations, and in Central Asia, I think that in Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan, there would be such problems, but we hope that this organization would have a good future, and it is developing not fast, but nevertheless it takes the best experience of OSCE and other organizations, and that would become the sustainable on the way of solving the problems in Asia. Many thanks. Very interesting presentation. Dear colleagues, any questions or remarks? It's clear that it's not a simple transformation, and it seems that universal rules, they are not followed, and if the organization for keeping particular rules, and it's not a simple period. And the second one is observation that by Tokayev, was it activated, or it is still developing? In my look, it's yes, Kazakhstan had global initiatives only at the first present. This was the part of the agenda. It was much spoken when Kazakhstan was the head of the OSCE in 2009. It was a massive event, and the Expo also, that was a really big event. But now we see that in Kazakhstan, all these initiatives are turned down, and in global perspective, I don't see such ambitions on the international area as in comparison to previous presidents. Yes, Kazakhstan is more not for the global initiatives, but the local initiatives, and they used to be like matters of Syria and United Nations initiatives, but at the present president, there are less such initiatives, and we are talking less about the international agenda, but more about the internal agenda. But you mentioned that there are 20 people in a headquarters, so any international organization, we can say that it is successful when we have the secretariat, the people with the common ideas and outlook, and this is different. It has over-national character. It is different to the membrane countries, so that what they do interests of the CICA, for example. So they push forward the values of CICA. To which extent you can say that this over-nationality is created, or as everyone is saying about his own national concerns, and they just share them. Well, up to now, I do not see such an idea, such an overnational body in post-Soviet, but these are bodies of Eurasian Union. But the idea of overnational force or power,
Не власти, эти ценности, да, стандарты какие-то. Вот там стандарты СВМДА, допустим, да, вот.
То есть пока из того, что я вот видела,
yes, and what I have heard or what I have read, and I have read even all what other presidents were talking about on this forum. There were presidents or representatives, and everyone was talking about only his problems. For example, Pakistan was talking that climate change, how can that influence 4 million of the migrants, and they need money, and yes, what kind of problems they have, and they're talking about them. And Russia was talking about Afghanistan, and we were talking about the hybrid war against Russia, so everyone was talking about his own problems. That's why we don't have such a national. But East is a very peculiar thing, and dear colleagues, are there any comments or questions about the CICA? Thank you very much for your report, for the answers on the questions. We should go forward, and I think that if you can stop sharing the screen, that would be great, and we go forward. Today we're talking about the non-Western regionalism, and we mentioned OSCE, and we said that in perspective, the external actorness of the European Union as the global actor, its power would go down. One case we would consider, and we have Irina Popova, the research fellow, Center for Research of International Institutes, RNEPA. Irina, please. Yes, good evening, dear colleagues. Let me upload my presentation. That would be in English, but I'm going to say that in English. Well, it's up to you because we have translation. Yep, and despite that, we have a trend that Asia is becoming the center of attraction and the center of influence for the global economy and center for coordination of all the global initiatives, and this trend is already for many years. European Union would not surrender in its global leadership, and understanding that it has its own particular problems, it will try to find the niches with which its global leadership can keep or even reinforce. That's why today I would like to explain briefly about the tools which European Union is developing in frames of implementation of the Green Deal. The topic of my presentation is about the internationalization of the Green Deal, the goals of global actors and the standards of European Union, the models of behavior for others. Irina, can you make a full screen? Sorry for interruption. Okay, great. So briefly, there is a plan of my presentation in order to shorten that, but I move to the main topic. For the beginning, I will say a couple of words about the Green Deal. It was announced. The European Union announced the Green Deal in 2019, and that consists of sectoral strategies, more than 40 of them, and more than 40 acts and communications are accepted, and acts also. In the period of 2019-2022, there were 52 mechanisms were introduced. This is our calculation, and several years already we carry out the scientific work dedicated to the Green Deal of European Union, and there is a big amount of mechanism in different directions of European Union that were developed starting with the 2019. And after the Green Deal was introduced, in order to fix it as a basis for functioning of European Union, the Green Deal was introduced as one of two pillars for the budget of European Union. The first one is a Green Deal, another one is strategy for digitalization of European Union. In the year 2022, after there was a conflict in Ukraine has started, they were introduced Repower EU, which is mainly targeted to the diversification of energy sources to get rid of Russian sources, but European Commission suggested to structure the plan for refusal so that it would correspond also the Green Deal. So refusal is not just a shift to the new sources from other countries, but more faster deployment of the alternative energy. And European Union sees the Green Deal internationalization that's not only a tool to achieve its climate goals or particular level, but also to keep its global leadership, because the questions of the climate are the center in the agenda of many institutions, in the many policies, and green growth is more and more a narrative where the transformation, energy transformation, they are becoming the centers of growth, and we stop watching the climate limitations at the problem, and we start to look at this under another angle when we see in this transition the source or point of growth. And this philosophy, it is supported much by European Union, quite aggressively imposed sometimes even. And the main tools for the goals internationalization, they are based on that the European Union has a very attractive market, and just to put the conditions for access on the market, European Union can make very serious influence on the global values of chains and scales and other processes using the attractiveness of the market and legislative basis. Brussels effect. European Union as a leader in establishment of the standards. So European Union tries through the regulation and climate to keep its positions on the global arena. And despite that, with Asian countries, which we pay more attention in frame of our seminar, they have weaker investment connections of European Union still through the indirect or direct tools. And it's a question whether they would manage it or not, but we cannot neglect it because the presence of European Union is global, and from many tools which European Union suggested, I expressed several most important with potential influence. First of all, this is the mechanism of transborder carbon correction, which everyone discussed 1,000 times everywhere. And also the carbon leakage prevention, through which the system of quota trading of European Union effectively would also cover other actors, because to export their goods into European Union, you have to those who purchase the goods from foreign suppliers to purchase the quotas which cover the carbon trail of imported products. Further, I'm going to talk about the two initiatives which are less spoken in our country, though they on the influence they can have even higher effect. This is the policy of sustainable product. This has a big amount of new demands for the goods, so just to enter on the European market, and this is not only about the package. In technologies of production and establishment of these rules, there would be direct influence on the partners because they have to, and also indirect. Because through the global chains of the value, the effect, it would be easier to get into the new standards and to sell on all the markets up to the new standards than to produce, especially for European Union and other markets. And another very important initiative, which is not much spoken, it is zero deforestation. And this is also a new demand for the products imported into EU, connected to the degradation of the forests, which is connected to the production. So if for your goods you need to make deforestation, or production needs deforestation, these goods would not get onto the market of European Union, or would hardly get. And the demands for the enter, also there are additional costs for the labeling and other process. And this initiative obviously would touch the interests of developing countries, and the mostly suffering countries would be Indonesia and Brazil, which are the centers of development in Asian region. Now I'm going to talk about the new initiatives of European Union, and they are quite important for the development of Green Deal. Potentially, they can make a big influence on the global markets. One of them is connected to the keeping of the competitiveness of European industry and technology, which is needed for the climate transition, like different batteries, wind, solar batteries, and so on and so forth. And the second one is the strategy is closely connected to the first one. So on the provision of the access to the critically important materials like the metals, minerals. And in frames of these two strategies, European Union has introduced new tools in order to protect its competition and for critical material, and these tools enlarge very strongly the massive of the state support in the European Union. And in technologies, and all the investment pack out of their own resources is 500 billion euros. It is comparable to the subsidies in the frames of on the inflation in the United States. And plus to this, European Union tries to use the tools of trade policy on the strict control of direct investments in international trade. And let alone this, in the frames of bilateral cooperation, European Union suggests set of initiatives, trade of technologies, which is also established with India, a very important player, and the United States. Initiative of Global Gateway. And this is an initiative which is traditional scheme, which suggests the investments into the exchange of internal management and governance, protection of the human rights of the worker, and so on and so forth. It also planned to establish the partnership on technologies, and a very interesting initiative which European Union is developing the Club for critically important raw materials. In 2 words, I'm going to say about the Climate Club, one more initiative, which is also in G7, G20 promoted. The idea of this initiative is to provide the access of the critically important raw materials, which that's why the opportunity of European Union to have its own raw materials, they're almost on zero level. In the frames of this idea, there is a strategic partnership on raw materials, and it was signed with Canada, Ukraine. What is interesting in our discussion with Kazakhstan, let alone that European Union takes its own policy and multilateral activities, it's actively making the agenda of international institutions. And I have expressed, this is G20, where the presence of the year 2022, there was the influence of the Green Deal on the agenda of G20, and there were marginalized the questions for the developing countries of energy safety and provision of all the sources of the energy for the population. Instead of this, ahead there were questions of alternative sources, decarbonization, taking down the emissions, and first of all, there was in agenda, it was mentioned the tool of carbon price making. In G7, the influence of European Union is very big, and Germany was the head of this in the 2022, and it suggested to make the climate club. This can unify the main emittents of the greenhouse gases, and together they would agree about the strengthening of the carbon regulation in exchange of technologies and investment for developing countries. And these countries would enter the trade barriers for non-joint to stimulate decarbonization of other countries of the world. And also in frames of G7, there were energy transition for many big developing countries where it is suggested to have different investment, mainly credit ones, for the energy transition and refusal of the coal. And there is also partnership with South Africa, Indonesia, Vietnam, and also actively discussed with India, but they cannot get to decision. India, it's not easy to convince as Indonesia and other countries. Also, European Union actively pushes forward the initiatives in frames of conferences, and in Glasgow there is interest, which methane pledge, which also many countries joined, where European Union quite suggested to use its infrastructure in order to define the volume of the emissions, and the European Union suggests its standards and structure on the registration of the emissions in order to be head of the regulation of the methane. For European Union, it's an important question of World Trade Organization, and there is also discussion of subsidies in the clean technologies, net zero technologies, and the activities which are distorting one in CRM trades. Also, there is initiative of the climate and trade, liberalization of trading goods, services, green goods, prioritization of goods that contribute to green development and energy transformation. And as a result, just a couple of words of main interesting initiatives of European Green Deal in Asia, because today we are mainly talk about the Asian regionalism, and European Union has interest for European Union, though in strategic documents, if we do not consider Europe, the main partner is considered to be Africa. But strategically important countries as Vietnam and Indonesia, because as we have spoken, the big attention is to critically important CRA materials. And it is suggested to develop different formats of cooperation. Let alone this, European Union suggests the initiatives for developed countries. Together with Japan, there was signed the first Green Alliance, and the same alliance is only with Norway, and this is the form of partnership which can be for coordinating of standards in order to push them forward on the international agenda. European Union played a significant role in quota trade in Asia, and they were made in a consultation to Korea, China, New Zealand, and Australia, where Australia did not launch this quota trade. And this is strategic vision in order to, in the future, to combine this quotas and to make the big carbon market. And the European Union are the main investors into energy transfer and green transition. That's why they also help such countries as Indonesia, Vietnam, and other important countries from the region. And without European financing, without the European money, it would be difficult to accumulate sufficient financing to help the countries to overcome this dependence and to make the climate transition. So I have already told you that the critically important raw material is on the agenda of European Union, isn't a priority. This is agreed with Kazakhstan, and European Union would like to sign it with Vietnam, but suggesting not just investment, but the increase in the and at least in the word they do not pretend to the added value. And finally, the perspective direction for European Union is the harmonization of the green taxonomy with ASEAN, and they would also try to make the active policy to make the standards for the financial markets would be harmonized for ASEAN countries and European Union. These are the main conclusions. And I think I would finish in order to answer more questions, if any. And I would leave the final slide in order to consider the main conclusions. Thank you very much for attention. Thank you very much, Irina, for a very interesting speech. And that's clear that the transition on the next technological level, this is a necessary and helpful thing, and we need it also. But the question is, who is paying for this transition? And this is the question about the global climate justice. And then we move to not more even about the energy, but this is more a theory of the fairness and who should pay whom money. And of course, we understand it also that it was much spoken that the metals, valuable metals, it was the same with Seven Sisters. The price for oil that was $2-3, but up to 1972, 73, but then it became a fair price, and now the price for the metals, it is also as it used to be the price for the oil. So the process of nationalization and its increase of sovereignty and the control of the metals, it has not even started yet, and when it would start, it would be the same as on the oil markets. The questions, please do not hesitate to ask the questions, dear colleagues. Yaunikes, he is from the department, he is the specialist in international law. Yaunikes, please. Hello once again, thank you very much for the question. And for the speech, it's not even more the question, it's the green transition and Green Deal. But sometimes for me it's even funny because and Europe needs a fresh air. But the question is how they treat other countries. Yesterday I just was watching the companies having a big contracts in Nigeria, how they actually extract urine. This is the biggest company. Yes, Germany refused. There's a basic energy, for example, but well, the processing of this urine and other metals, what you're talking about. And someone is suffering finally. And yesterday in Nigeria there was a case that the French company, Canadian company, it did not undergo all the controls for the processing of all this urine, and they started to and you understand what I mean, but who is going to pay? The main thing is that the Europe wants to have a good situation, but only Europe wants a nice life, but not other countries. That's why during this summit, African countries, and Asian countries also need that the should pay for this. That's why I'm not. I'm that in the nearest future. No, on the contrary, there are people who suffer from this because how many people would suffer from the metal production, but no one is interested in here in Europe. The lifestyle should be changed because 10% of consumption is Europe, and that's why who should change their attitude? That's the point. The lifestyle should be changed, then it would be fine. Thank you very much, Nikes. And Irina, we have a question. We now move to ASEAN, to ASEAN-centric. We have Mikhail Molchanov. But the question is the following. Well, first of all, the negotiations and European Union and ASEAN, and I missed this moment for these agreements about the economic partnership. They were not with ASEAN, but with some countries. So this is like ASEAN do not recognize it. But on another side, on the Green Deal, you say that they on some of one of the programs they recognize that other countries are third countries and ASEAN is recognized as an international organization. And the first and the second questions are about the main. What do you think ASEAN-centric format? First of all, in RAP, in some time, really, in some spheres, they would be able to establish the rules of cooperation as European Union is doing. Thank you so much. As far as the first question is concerned, European Union does not neglect the subjectivity of ASEAN and respects ASEAN, but from the point of pragmatism, they understand that on a tactic level, it's easier to sign the agreements with separate countries, not with ASEAN the whole. But the opportunity to sign the agreement between European Union and ASEAN is possible. And they also face the problem with Mercosur because they signed with the Union and nothing is so simple and everything is stagnating. But it's like we can make agreement with Hungary. This is the level of integration. In European Union, it's unacceptable, it's impossible, it's just, this is the function of the integration itself. In the trade policy in European Union, it's maximum, so you can do anything if you want to make a separate agreement with. It's not always fair, but this is reality, and we should think what we can do in the conditions and how this outbalance to level up. As far as the perspectives of rules, it is possible, of course, but the level of integration, it's not so deep so that the countries can sit and overcome this all limitations and contradictions and to agree something fast. I think that with the presence of consensus, they can easily accept the global standards, which can make an influence on the all markets. But it's easier to make in European Union, and there is effect of the railways which we cannot get out. And even if we take a standard which is in the sphere of regulating of digital economy, it was taking regulation of protection of personal data, and that's just imposed on the whole world. And those who started to think about the protection personal data that I looked on the European Union. It's so beautiful, so detailed. And if you're not at China or United States, and this is everyone accepted the European model, that's why it seems to me the level of consensus between Asian countries, these are two global conditions for them to discuss really, and if they overcome it, then automatically the size of the economy and the markets and this initiative. Thank you so much. Very interesting outlook from European part to Asian regionalism. Thank you so much. And we have the final report. Sorry, we have Mikhail Molchanov. Mikhail Molchanov, professor of University of Salamanca. Mikhail, please. Thank you very much, and I would like to thank Irina for very interesting report. In a little bit, I would correct her because I'm also in my scientific activity. I work also with state administration in practical aspect in Canada. Not we are in European Union Canadian laws for the protection of digital data of the citizens are different and not on the level of European Union. There are debates that it should be somehow the right to be forgotten. In America, they are not effective. And the Western world generally, though the legislation is different in some significant moments.
As we are short of time, and the presentation is prepared and the paper is written in English. So if I can share my screen, hopefully I'll be able to do it. I wonder if you can see it now. Is the presentation on screen?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, thank you very much. So it's Russia and ASEAN, and again, as a segue to the previous paper, indeed, we are talking about Asia-centric regionalism. However, Asia-centric regionalism is still under much influence of the Western-centered regionalism. So it's too early to write off the Western-centered regional formats and patterns, especially given the fact that the European Union is an acknowledged leader in regional integration worldwide, precisely because its supranational structures are going much further than ASEAN or the Eurasian Economic Union or any other regional organization for that matter, anywhere in the world. The level of direct integration of the governance structure in the European Union is, of course, unprecedented. So I would like to start by presenting a broader picture of what's going on in the region. We have a number of regional integration organizations which we can conditionally subdivide into Russia-centered, South Asia-centered, China-centered, and China pivoting organizations. Also, US or Western-led, so-called oceanic, I would call them that way, organizations in the region, such as Indo-Pacific Economic Framework for Prosperity, or Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership, based in the Pacific region without the United States, but with Canada, Australia, and other participation. So it's a Western-led organization. And there are some groups which are overarching, with big influence over the region, such as APEC, Organization of Islamic Cooperation, European Union, of course, in various formats, takes part in Asian Regional Forum, ASEM, and is a strategic partner of ASEAN, acknowledged strategic partner. So all of these landscape, of course, influences Russia's relations and the Eurasian Economic Union relations with Eastern regional organizations. So another slide is devoted to various turns in Russia's foreign policy, and I subdivide the Eastern vector in Russian foreign policy in two sub-vectors. One is East Asian. This is toward the Great Ocean narrative from 2012. And another is Eurasian proper. So the left side of the slide presents a history chronology of Russia's foreign policy in turning east in a sense of turning towards the Asia Pacific. Of course, this turn accelerated after 2013-14 when Russia essentially broke relations with the European Union, if not diplomatically, then mentally, let's put it this way, over Ukraine's association. And it followed with a gas deal with China and the foreign policy 2016, which is premised on the assumption of the world power shift towards Asia-Pacific region. Then the next big landmark event was Russia's becoming the ASEAN strategic partner in 2018. There were economic developments, which you're well aware of, such as Power of Siberia launch, a huge gas contract of the century, including Power of Siberia 2, which is announced this year. All of this clearly speaks about Russia and the Russia-led Eurasian Economic Union turning towards Asia-Pacific. But looking at Eurasia proper, once again, I think the landmark event was around 2012. In this case, that was presidential campaign in Russia, where President Putin, or presidential candidate then Putin, spent lots of time and efforts in his speeches and articles advocating for Eurasian integration. So taking the flag, so to speak, from former president of Kazakhstan, Nazarbayev, and becoming #1 champion of the Eurasian integration. And of course, the events on this front were trying to bring Ukraine into the customs union with Russia, Belarus, and Kazakhstan in 2013, which precipitated the current crisis. Then Eurasian Economic Union coming into existence officially in 2015. The next year, the idea of a greater Eurasian partnership was advanced, and free trade agreement between the Eurasian Economic Union and Vietnam was concluded. And incidentally, Vietnam was mentioned a couple of times already. I find this country very fascinating for many reasons. And in the context of this discussion, Vietnam is a member of 80 free trade agreements with various countries of the world, including and various organizations, regional organizations in particular. So Vietnam is simultaneously a member of free trade agreements with ASEAN, with Eurasian Economic Union, with the European Union, with a number of other organizations, which brings me to a thought. As you may recall, the crisis in 2013 in Ukraine started with the assertion of European Union chiefs that one country cannot be a member of a customs union with one group of countries, and a free trade agreement with Europe in another instance. So you cannot be serving both masters, so to speak. You cannot be a member of or associate member of the European Union and at the same time participate in the customs union with Russia and Belarus. Well, the example of Vietnam actually speaks to the falsity of this argument. You can be a member of different free trade organizations, and ASEAN and countries of this region, especially Vietnam, they prove the point. Anyways, so talking about Eurasia and the Eurasian Economic Union in particular, 2019 was another important year where free trade agreements were concluded between the Eurasian Economic Union and Singapore, Serbia, and Iran. Also, a trade agreement with China was signed. And an important development with the start of war in Ukraine, Eurasian Economic Union becomes a very important instrument of parallel import and helps resist Western sanctions, helps Russia resist Western sanctions. So, talking about contemporary foreign policy priorities, this is based on the current, recently issued foreign policy concept of the Russian Federation. I find it fascinating because now we can see a focus on Russia's national interests rather than some sort of geopolitical pole of gravity, which was the case before. As we all know, Russian foreign policy went through periods of Atlanticism, orientation to the East, and the current foreign policy concept is mostly based, well, it looks inside. It's based on Russia's national interest, an equitable and sustainable world order and the rule of law. But this concentration on the national interest of the country also makes a very key message of the Great Eurasian Partnership. And the Great Eurasian Partnership integration contour, which is an idea of unification of the Eurasian Economic Union, SCO, ASEAN, and Belt and Road Initiative. It pays attention, the foreign policy concept pays attention to cross-regional, multilateral, and equitable security architecture in Eurasia and East Asia, effective assistance to Russian allies and partners, the idea of Russia-centered regional integration in Eurasia as a tool to project Russia's interests to other regions, and of course the idea of multipolar international system and opposition to the US hegemonism, neocolonialism, and neoliberal globalization. So these are the current foreign policy priorities, and as you can see, the idea of regional integration, cross-regional integration, and Russia's participation in these formats, in various formats, is one of the key ideas in this foreign policy concept. So moving towards the ASEAN specifically, Russia has been a dialogue partner with ASEAN since 1996, but has moved quite slowly. There was lots of criticism, both open criticism in academia and veiled criticism from diplomats, that these relations should have been sped up, accelerated a long time ago. So the Partnership Fund was established in 2007, but initial contribution was pretty low, about $500,000. It grew up to 1.75 million only by 2011, and it is set up to increase by 1.5 million annually since 2011. So this partnership fund is used for concrete initiatives, such as the Center for the Studies of ASEAN, which was established at MGIMO, Russian Institute of International Relations, and some other concrete initiatives in Russia and in ASEAN. Russia acceded to the Treaty of Amity and Cooperation in Southeast Asia, which is a foundational treaty for ASEAN, in 2004, and the ambassador to ASEAN was appointed since 2009. Interestingly enough, the ambassador was appointed, but there was no office at that time. So office was created much later, in 2017, at a physical office in Jakarta. Key summits, and these are, I'm talking about Russia-ASEAN summits, not ASEAN summits. The first one took place in Kuala Lumpur, 2005, the second in Hanoi, 2010. There was a very interesting commemorative summit in Sochi in 2016. The third one in Singapore in 2018, and the fourth one by video conference in 2021. Russia takes part in essential entities that form the ASEAN format, such as ASEAN Regional Forum, post-ministerial conferences, defense ministers meetings plus, and the East Asia Summit. Another landmark events was the conclusion signing up of the Energy Cooperation Work Program, 2010-2015, several comprehensive plans of actions. The very first one was called Comprehensive Program of Action, but then it switched to Comprehensive Plan 2005-2015, and then 2016-2020. Finally, as I said, in 2017, Russia's official diplomatic mission to ASEAN opened up. And the very next year, there was a very important event, the announcement of strategic partnership between Russia and ASEAN. So Russia is now no less of value partner to ASEAN as the European Union. Cooperation also expanded strategically to cover such areas as security and information and communication technologies, digital technologies. And the most recent event was in 2021, the video conference summit. The Russia-ASEAN summit adopted comprehensive plan of action 2021 to 2025. All of this in spite of Western sanctions against Russia and against open and not so open pressure by Western countries to basically to wind down cooperation between ASEAN and Russia. So the ASEAN countries didn't submit to that pressure. Cooperation continues and represents a very important instrument of Russia's influence in the region. The next slide concerns Russia's trade with ASEAN. So I put, for the sake of comparison, Canada and New Zealand here, because of course, and unfortunately for both sides, Russia is not in the same group of countries as China or Japan or South Korea when bilateral trade with ASEAN are taken into consideration. Russia is in the second tier group of countries, such as Canada and New Zealand, taking place somewhere in between these two. And as you can see, the trade development is rather uneven. There was some growth, and it was quite impressive growth until 2014. Then a drop down with the first round of Western sanctions. Then a bit of rebounding happened. But since 2022, as other speakers said, the sanctions, anti-Russian sanctions, of course, affect the mutual trade between Russia and ASEAN in particular. Specifically in the case of Singapore, that fully supports Western sanctions and presents substantial difficulties in bilateral trade with that country. Much less so, of course, with Vietnam and some others. So the trade is, let's put it bluntly, rather unimpressive. And there is lots to develop and lots to grow in this regard to bring substance to Russia's and the Eurasian Economic Union relations with the ASEAN. So why ASEAN is important? For many reasons. Of course, mainly it is important because of strategic balancing for both sides. Russia, of course, needs ASEAN to balance against the West and Western-dominated regional integration organizations, and the US and the EU dominated Western foreign policy. So this rebalancing to the East helps. But ASEAN also needs Russia, specifically to balance against the US, American encroachment in the region, but also against our dear friend China's dominance. So for the ASEAN, it's quite an important goal for all of these countries not to get one-sidedly dependent on China. For Russia, of course, trade diversification helps to beat Western sanctions. And there is also potentially a big role for ASEAN +3, especially China, but also South Korea and Japan, big role in potentially developing Russia's Far East, which is in dire need of investment. Another important objective is access to Asia Pacific in open competition with the United States and the European Union. And Russia needs this access once again, because it needs to diversify its trade away from the West. But quite clearly, ASEAN also serves as an important role model for the Eurasian Economic Union, specifically ASEAN values, the ASEAN way, and the principles of consensus, intergovernmentalism, and non-interference. This is precisely that situation when, as one of the previous speakers said, it appears that they all speak about themselves, about their own internal interests, but somehow eventually they come to mutual understanding, and they come to the finding of common grounds where they can help each other, or at least understand each other. And these principles of intergovernmentalism, non-interference and consensus, which distinguish ASEAN from the European Union. European Union is an example of supranational governance. ASEAN is an example of intergovernmental governments of a regional entity. And it appears that they also work. They work in spite of these seemingly, well, incoherent, sometimes self-centered policies of member states. ASEAN also is an example of open regionalism. Open regionalism with full attention to the national and cultural specifics and understanding that no one size fits all. Again, linking to the discussion that happened, like Hungary and the European Union. Hungary is a very interesting case where European Union tries to impose this one-size-fits-all ideology on a country that basically takes care of its own national interests in a legitimate way. So ASEAN is the opposite to this model. It is based on understanding that individual specificities, individual problems, and the considerations should be taken into account by everyone else. In the post-sanctions world, Russia would need, and the Eurasian Economic Union would need to expand cooperation in energy, arms sales. ASEAN is a big market potentially for Russia's arms sales and was a big market before the start of the current round of sanctions. High tech, which is the substance of the current program of cooperation with ASEAN, including information technologies, nuclear technologies, biotechnologies, but also in such areas as transit, tourism, agriculture, and medicine, especially in post-COVID world. Russian vaccines, they have an important role to play in that market. And back to the free trade agreement between the Eurasian Economic Union and Vietnam since 2016. Russia still doesn't have a free trade agreement with ASEAN as a whole, but this format of a free trade agreement with the ASEAN member Vietnam serves as a good model and a promising model that cooperation will expand to potentially having a free trade agreement with ASEAN as a whole. So I will, that's my final slide, I believe. I will address the question why Russia has been moving slow in this cooperation. Well, of course, as of 2022, Russia's attention and resources are focused on the war, and this slows down cooperation in other parts of the world. But also securitization of an international dialogue started happening before 2022. It's going on since, well, at least 2014 and arguably earlier. It's arguably from the President Putin Munich speech. So this securitization of an international dialogue is also slowing down cooperation in trade in particular. Russia is interested to expand cooperation in the area of security, politics, but invests much less resources in trade. Russia's obsession with international prestige is another factor which plays, in my view, in this situation. There is a bit of a fear of a regional drift with regards to Russia's Far East. Currently, of course, China dominates in the region, but with the participation of other countries of ASEAN or ASEAN +3, the region may start gravitating more outside than inside, than towards the European center of the country. Regionalism in pursuit of a global agenda, as we saw in the concept of Russian foreign policy, it may be a good thing, but it may also be something which is a bit detrimental to the concrete tasks of regional integration on the ground. When regionalism is taken as a strategic tool, it may take away from the concrete and practical tasks of building ties to countries in ASEAN. There is also criticism that Russia has very limited history of multilateral cooperation, being a big power and the successor to the Soviet Union. It didn't have to invest in multilateral cooperation where everyone is treated as the same, as equal member of the group. There is a bit of a trauma of post-imperial adjustment, which also contributes here. And finally, no serious investments in the region. So unfortunately, even now, the volume of the Asian-Russian trade represents between 0.1 and 0.3% for both sides. So this is minuscule, of course, and not only for Asian, but for Russia as well. So there is much hope that this will be expanded, the trade and investment will be expanded, because this forms the only real basis for cooperation in the region, trade and investment. Okay, so let's hope that more is to come. I would like to stop here. We'll be happy to answer your questions. Thank you.
Спасибо большое, Михаил Александрович. Вот есть...
Thank you very much, Mikhail. There is a question. There are questions in chat. 3 questions I see from Saken Mukan. And there are also questions from Vladimir, and there would be also a question from him. Yes, he will raise his hand.
Okay, so to read out any single position of ASEAN as a multilateral union, not single member, towards Russia-Ukraine conflict, special military or war, whatever, how to call. Well, it's mind. I haven't seen declarations that would be taken by the summit. As you know, the latest ASEAN summit actually failed to take this declaration precisely because of Russia's position. The Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov was there, and he blocked American proposals to declare something about Russia-Ukraine conflict. So at this point, I would say there is no single position because the countries of the region are divided. There are countries such as Vietnam that are more understanding of Russia's position. There are countries such as Singapore that are more understanding of the American position and assessment of this war. Therefore, I would say there is no single position formulated officially, at least. Are there any efforts from ASEAN to mediate the current crisis between Russia and Ukraine? Very interesting question. Yes, as you may recall, when there was the last summit of ASEAN in Cambodia, Hun Sen actually made an attempt to invite Russia's and Ukrainian representatives to sit down and talk. And he said it officially that, yes, we advanced the proposals to both sides to use this occasion. Ukraine, of course, used the occasion of the last ASEAN summit to accede to the treaty, to the foundational treaty on amity and cooperation. So there was an attempt to bring them to the table. This attempt failed, but it was stated by the first person in Cambodia. So, and the first person in the role of the president of the summit at that point. So I would say that yes, you can count this as an example of an effort by ASEAN to mediate the current crisis. And what is the level of strategic partnership between ASEAN and, well, US is considered a strategic partner as well, officially. The level of interdependency, well, it's a loaded question. I don't know what do you mean by the level of interdependency between ASEAN and US in terms of trade. It's significant, of course. In terms of US strategic attempts to bring ASEAN in its fold, it is also quite significant, and therefore another reason for Russia and for China to counter this attempt of the US, as Foreign Minister Lavrov said, to create dividing lines within ASEAN. So this is strategically Russia's main goal, to prevent the formation of these dividing lines. And yes, and Professor Belov, please. I see the hand.
Владимир Иванович, да, пожалуйста. Да. Владимир
Иванович. Можно по-русски задать вопрос, да?
Да, можно так,
да. Собственно, вот у вас в схеме...
Yes, in your scheme there is very interesting data, rich in data, and I did not see the data connected to the organization of the 7 Eastern Economic Forums. These Eastern Economic Forums in Vladivostok, Island, Russian. My question is, tell us, what are the functional tasks should be solved by Eurasian Economic Union, and what is the functionality of of Eastern Economic Forum. Thank you. Yes, there is such Eastern Economic Forum, and of course, from my point of view, it's an event on a level lower than ASEAN Summit, ASEAN plus Russia, but nevertheless, it is the weighty event, and it serves the same goals: overcome the external political isolation of Russia, attraction of attention, attraction of investments, and so on and so forth. So the format is important and interesting, but I would like to say to develop, and there are a lot of things to develop, starting from the point that the first summits, when Russia was invited to participate, the presidents did not go because of the summits. Half of the summits were on the level from the Russian side of Minister of Foreign Affairs, while from ASEAN countries were participating the first countries. Now it's clear why presidents did not fly, but in year 2012 and other years, there were opportunities to participate, and these opportunities were skipped. So the strategic cooperation should increase. What is the role of Eurasian Economic Union? Well, I think that the main role, if we talk about the tasks of overcoming the diplomatic isolation of Russia, first of all, to become the one front or one line in relations with ASEAN. And now, as our Kazakhstan colleagues were saying also today, that there are a lot of things under questions. There are different views and orientation views inside Eurasian Economic Union. And for different things, so the role of Eurasian Economic Union would be for Russia very weighty if Eurasian Economic Union would be rich as a governance, while we have all these secretariats, but we all understand perfectly that any things having a significance are solved on two levels. Between the first state, this is secretariats in comparison to European Commission and to European Council. There is not any real influence. There can be coordination role, but as arbitrage, which would be independent. Coordination Council would have influence, unless that would be to calls from Kremlin to Astana, then Eurasian Economic Union would be weak on external political essence, and that would be perceived less serious than it is. But if it has its own independent actor play, then it would be serious support in the diplomatic initiatives, in trade initiatives with ASEAN. Very important accents, especially on the visits of the first. I participated. Because of this, the first report, the representative of Eurasian Economic Commission was saying that one of the priority tasks is to establish the ASEAN. Is it an attempt to put the Eastern policy of Russia? Well, unfortunately, I don't know. I was not here. I did not participate the first report, but the idea is clear, because Eurasian Economic Commission must express more independence, and to be independent from Russia, but on consensus to be on the level of direct contacts with ASEAN. That would be very important, and that should be developed. But on the other side, would that bring a new life into the policy, external policy, foreign policy of Russia? Yes, that would bring a big impulse. But the people taking decisions in Russia did not understand that the more Kremlin would win, and you have this regime of the hand management, not to give them to the bureaucrats, to the external organization. And this is not right, because in this case, the more you give there externally, the more Russia would get back. This is my understanding of the problem. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And it was very rich seminar on non-Western regionalism. And we finished with ASEAN. Thank you, dear participants. Thank you very much. Thank you.